Good morning. My name is Paul Adamson, the chairman of the EUUK Forum, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the 2023 annual conference. At our first conference in 2021, we posed the question, will EU-UK relations get worse before they get better? At last year's conference, I ventured that the relationship appeared to have reached a new low. This year, however, there are clear grounds for optimism, or at least cautious optimism. The agreement on the Windsor Framework just over 3 months ago has reduced much of the tension surrounding the working of the Northern Ireland Protocol, which had until then cast such a long shadow over many of the areas where the two sides could, in principle, have been working more effectively together. Today's conference will assess and test the extent to which a new spirit of cooperation can now become the new normal, especially if we can now see signs of how both the EU and the UK are developing a longer-term strategy to deal with each other. Let me take you briefly through the programme. The opening keynote address will be given by James Cleverley, who has been the UK's Foreign Secretary since September 2022 and has been a Foreign Office Minister with a brief interruption since 2020. He will be followed by our second keynote delivered by Maroš Šefčovič, Vice President of the European Commission for Interinstitutional Relations, who has kindly given a keynote address at all our annual conferences. After his address, he will be in conversation with Catherine Barnard, Professor of EU Law and Employment Law at the University of Cambridge. As is now a tradition for our annual conference, Kelly Beaver, the Chief Executive of Ipsos UK and Ireland, will present some exclusive polling her organisation has undertaken for the EUK Forum on UK attitudes towards the European Union. This time, and for the first time, the polling also includes polling done in 9 EU countries, to give us a rounded picture of what those European countries think of the UK. Suzanne Lynch, Chief Brussels Correspondent at Politico, will then probe her further on the findings. Our first panel discussion will be on regulatory divergence and convergence, moderated by Peter Foster, Public Policy Editor at the Financial Times. His panelists are Anu Bradford, author of The Brussels Effect, Stefan Furing, Head of Unit for the EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement at the European Commission, and Stephen Phipson, CEO of Make UK. After lunch, David Lammy, the UK Labour Party's shadowed Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, will be in conversation with Duncan Robinson, Political Editor and Budget columnist at The Economist. This will be followed by our second panel discussion focusing on foreign and security policy cooperation, chaired by Patrick Winter, The Guardian's diplomatic editor. His panelists are Nathalie Loiseau, MEP, Chair of the European Parliament Subcommittee on Security and Defence. As you may know, she is also the European Parliament's co-chair of the Parliamentary Partnership Assembly, set up under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and was France's Minister for Europe from 2017 to 2019. She is joined by Sir David Livington, a former senior member of the British Cabinet, and, like Nathalie, also a former Minister for Europe, and Roderick Parks, head of the Future of Europe Centre at the German Council on Foreign Relations. And to round off a pretty full day, the BBC's Europe editor, Katja Adler, will conduct a rare, if not unique, joint interview with the EU's ambassador to the UK, Pedro Serrano, and the UK's ambassador to the EU, Lindsay Appleby. There will be opportunities throughout the conference for you to pose questions using the chat function, and our moderators will do their best to weave them into the discussions. If you want to tweet during the day, please use the hashtag EUUKConf2023, EUUKConf 2023. And if you miss or even want to rewatch any part of today's program, they will be available on our YouTube channel and via the EUUK Forum website. I would like to thank all the speakers for giving so freely of their time to take part in today's conference and for accepting my invitation so enthusiastically. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, City of London, MSD and Vodafone, whose ongoing support is greatly valued. I hope you will be able to stay with us throughout the conference and that you will have an interesting and thought-provoking day. And it now gives me great pleasure to hand over to James Cleverley. The Foreign Secretary recorded his remarks at the end of last week.
Be invited to speak at this year's EU-UK Forum annual conference, and I'm sorry not to be able to join you in person. It's a top priority for me that we foster an even closer UK-EU relationship, building on the achievements of the historic Windsor Framework. The European Union is a much valued ally and friend of the United Kingdom. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has brought us serious challenges. We have worked shoulder to shoulder to assist our Ukrainian friends and to guarantee European security in a new and more dangerous landscape. The energy crisis is far from over, and even if we've weathered the first phase well through our close cooperation, we continue to face strong economic headwinds. These and other related issues emphasize our close connection through geography, through history, culture, and the ties of family and friendship. When we work together on geopolitical issues, we help to make the world safer, fairer, and more prosperous. Our joint efforts on Ukraine have made a real difference, and they have brought European nations ever closer together. There is no denying there have been times over recent years which have been difficult. This is to be expected given the challenges that we've been working through together. And I know some of you here today will have wanted us in the UK to take a different direction. But it was clear to me that we were never leaving Europe. We are a European nation, and like you, we have global interests. We share the same values: democracy, our respect for the multilateral international system, our desire to uphold human rights and the rule of law. Reinvigorating and renewing our relations with European countries and the European Union is a real priority for me. As we made clear in the Integrated Review Refresh, we identified the Euro-Atlantic as the UK's primary theatre. The Windsor Framework marks the beginning of a new era for UK-EU relations. Trust and respect between the UK and the EU enables us to reach a historic milestone. We have built stable structures for the future cooperation, one that will deliver for the people and the businesses of Northern Ireland. Maroš, I look forward to working with you more closely to fulfill this joint commitment, and I remain grateful for our close work that got us over the line. I want to move forward in the same spirit of mutual confidence and ambition for our relationship, and to work closely with you on other areas of mutual interest. On security, our priorities are closely aligned. While NATO is the primary vehicle for the defence of Europe, we recognise the crucial role the EU plays in securing the peace and prosperity of the continent. And we welcome cooperation between NATO and the EU when it strengthens the Euro-Atlantic security architecture. Migration is a top priority. Close coordination and dialogue have helped us clamp down on illegal migration and on the gangs that ply this criminal trade. But I know we can go further, working with the EU and Cali Group countries to stop illegal cross-channel migration. On energy, we're working hand in hand to develop renewable energy in the North Sea. This will power our clean energy transition and give us secure energy supplies in the future. And finally, on science and research, our collaboration will help solve global challenges. With 4 of the world's top 10 universities and a technology sector worth over $1 trillion, we bring a lot to the table. The benefits of collaboration are self-evident. Nowhere in the world does the UK have such a concentration of partners and friends as we do in Europe. We are partners in NATO. We are partners in the G7, in the Council of Europe, in the United Nations, and of course, we are neighbours. I want us to work even more closely on global issues and even more closely on the security of our European neighbourhood, on energy security, on climate change, on international development. I look forward to taking this agenda forward and to welcoming EU presidents to London for the Ukraine Recovery Conference, which we are hosting with our Ukrainian friends. I wish you a productive and enjoyable EU-UK Forum Annual Conference.
Thank you very much, Foreign Secretary. Thank you, James. It's now my great pleasure to hand over to Catherine Barnard, who will moderate the next session and introduce our keynote address. Over to you, Catherine.
Well, thank you very much indeed. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be here. I have the honour of welcoming Maroš Šefčovič to talk to us this morning. Good morning, Maroš. Very nice to see you. Maroš is going to give us a brief speech, and then I will follow up with a handful of questions in the very short period of time we've got. Maroš, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor. It's indeed the pleasure to participate yet again in EUUK Forum Annual Conference. So first I will start with sending my best greetings to the chairman, to Paul Adamson, to greet all of you. And of course, it's excellent opportunity to address some of the issues you will be discussing the whole day, especially after the remarks presented by my dear colleague, Secretary of State James Cleverley, with whom we've been seeing each other quite frequently. And of course, we stay in very intensive contact. I also would like to start by thanking the forum for its hard work over the past year. Your goal of facilitating a constructive and informed dialogue between European neighbors, it's a very important one, especially in today's uncertain world. And this conference has become an excellent opportunity for exchanging on EU-UK relations. Hearing James's words just now, it really hit home to me just how far we have come in the past 12 months. In early 2022, Russia's brutal and unlawful invasion of Ukraine has reminded the EU and the UK that we remain close and like-minded allies. Nonetheless, this time last year, we were still searching for solutions to the concrete problems experienced on the ground in Northern Ireland and the implementation of the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland. And working under the leadership of President von der Leyen and Prime Minister Sunak, and thanks to the constructive, creative and collaborative approach on both sides, we managed to agree on a comprehensive set of joint solutions. And I want to take this opportunity once again to personally thank my UK interlocutors, James Cleverley, but also Northern Ireland Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris for our cooperation, for what we achieved together, for understanding each other, and really for spending a lot of time in looking jointly for the joint solutions. And these joint solutions, as you are no doubt aware, came in the form of Windsor Framework. And they cut across the sectors, including agri-food, medicines, customs, VAT and excise, state aid, tariff rate quotas, and governance. And they are designed to address in a definitive manner the challenges experienced by people and businesses on the ground. An important element of the Windsor Framework is enhanced stakeholder engagement, and it will ensure that the voices are heard more clearly than ever. The Windsor Framework preserves the integrity of both EU's single market and Northern Ireland's integral parts in the United Kingdom's internal market. And crucially, it will maintain the foundations of peace by avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland. And all this was done in full respect of legitimate interests of both the EU and the UK. The Windsor Framework represents a deliberate and careful balance, granting flexibilities on the condition that agreed safeguards are in place. But our world did not finish with agreement on the Windsor Framework. Our joint priority now is timely and faithful implementation of all its elements. We are already delivering on this. The 3 EU regulations enacting the agreed solutions on agri-food, medicines, and tariff rate quotas for certain categories of steel were adopted in a record time last month in Strasbourg and Brussels. In addition, just last Friday, the Commission published the implementation measures for the customs simplifications for the movements of goods not at risks and for parcels. And last Friday, the UK issued a first set of guidance documents on medicines, agri-food and customs. Moreover, both sides published further guidance on the application of the Windsor Framework's state aid rules. We continue working closely with our UK counterparts at all levels on advancing the implementation of all elements of Windsor Framework. There is a lot of work still to be done, but I'm confident that our joint collaborative approach will continue to bear fruit. So do we have a new relationship after the Windsor Framework? The Windsor Framework has certainly allowed us to turn the page and move our relationship forward. But it is important to remember that our relationship is based on the two wide-ranging and exhaustive agreements. The withdrawal agreement, which has been complemented by the Windsor Framework, and the trade and cooperation agreement of December 2020. We must now ensure the continued implementation of both agreements. For example, with a view to withdrawal agreement rules on citizens' rights. The comprehensive trade and cooperation agreement covers our relationship in the fields ranging from trade to transport, from fisheries to energy, from law enforcement to judicial cooperation. With the Windsor Framework putting our relationship on a more positive trajectory, the EU and the UK are jointly committed to exploiting the full potential of the TCA. We will do this by making full use of its governance body. James Cleverley and I reaffirmed this at the most recent meeting of the TCA's Partnership Council held back-to-back with the Joint Committee under the Withdrawal Agreement on the 24th of March. The Partnership Council agreed to advance the implementation of the TCA in different areas, for example, energy, security, and the UK's participation in union programs. We are currently working closely with the UK in order to take all TCA deliverables forward. To give you an example of this, the Commission has adopted a proposal for a memorandum of understanding that will create a forum for structured dialogue on financial services regulation. We are also going to set up a structured dialogue on counterterrorism and cybersecurity. We will, of course, continue to monitor the implementation of the entire TCA, in particular in relations to the level playing field commitments. As agreed in the Partnership Council, we will also continue to address difficult topics, such as UK legislation like the Retain EU Law Bill, where EU concerns persist. The TCA offers significant potential to further improve our partnership. However, it is not and can never be a replacement for the EU membership. Trade can no longer be as frictionless and dynamic as it was before when the UK was part of the EU's internal market. This inevitably means additional costs for businesses on both sides. Over time, increased divergence may bring even more costs and will further deepen the barriers to trade between EU and the UK. And this is regrettable, but must be accepted. And it is why we are committed to making the most of the trade and cooperation agreement to our mutual benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, I remain deeply convinced, as I said a year ago, that a stable and positive relationship between the EU and the UK is in our mutual interest. So I'm very satisfied with the progress we have made over the last 12 months. The EU and the UK still face many common challenges, not least Russia's illegal aggression against Ukraine. As friends and allies, and together with our partners around the world, we stand shoulder to shoulder in support of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. I'm confident that working together in a spirit of partnership, we can continue to exploit the full potential of our new EU-UK relationship. I look forward to our future collaboration, and I'm sure that the EU-UK Forum will maintain its important role in promoting dialogue and discussion. And I thank you for your attention, and of course wish you a successful conference today. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that very helpful and constructive and very positive speech, Mr. Šefčovič. I wonder if I could start with more or less where you left off, which was you mentioned the TCA review. And with the TCA review, of course, many people are hoping for some deliverables which make the TCA a bit more like EU membership. Is that likely, or are your ambitions actually much more limited?
I think that first and foremost, yeah, we received quite a lot of questions, and we have seen that there is increased interest in the TCA review. As far as our calendar goes, I think that it's more for 2026. And I think it would be the first review after the 5 years. I think that at the same time, if you look at what was the ambition, what was the motivation, which is so well enshrined in Article 776, it was the commitment that both parties will jointly review the implementation of the agreement and any matters related thereto. So this article doesn't constitute a commitment to reopen the TCA or to negotiate supplementary agreements. This was, I would say, the legalistic answers from me. What I also would like to say more politically here is that the TCA is in place for something like 2 years. And we are absolutely convinced that we haven't used its full potential. And at first, we should really check how is it implemented, what kind of opportunities it brings to the both sides, and use all the fora we created, because there are 19 specialized committees which should look at, I would say, day-to-day issues, day-to-day problems. But I'm afraid that TCA will simply not be able to recreate any kind of notion of on the single market, and I think that perfectly well. I mean, there are customs checks, there are customs controls. Both of us, we want to see what is coming into our internal market. And I would say that you probably noticed that in my introductory remarks that if you would go for more divergence, so then of course you would need more discussions about the equivalencies and so on and so forth. So to put it shortly, I would say more divergence means less trade, and therefore I think the choices will have to be made how to frame that relationship in the future. But I think that clear, I would say, new spirit which is there in a EU-UK relationship, that we've been able to tackle, I would say, extremely difficult and sensitive issues in a manner which was respectful, in a manner which brought us together in very intensive works. And I'm not talking about President and Prime Minister or James and Chris and myself, but also on the level of our teams. I think it brought the new trust, new confidence in our relationship, and the possibility to speak very openly with each other. So I just hope that with that new spirit, we can tackle all these issues, but we have to be very aware about the, I would say, ramification of the two governing treaties, which are now, of course, governing our relationship.
Well, thank you for that. Just on the same subject, you mentioned 2026 as the first time that the Commission is going to look at the TCA review. Has any dialogue been opened up between the two sides already in preparation for that period? You also mentioned about future agreements. Would the EU contemplate, even within the TCA review or outside it, further agreements, and if so, on what?
I think that, of course, we are in I would say, permanent contact with our UK partners, and we are assessing, how our relationships are evolving. So we haven't started yet the work on already reviewing our relationship with the view of the time frame of 2026, but we are of course assessing them, and we will publish an annual report on our relationship where we would, I would say, assess all the aspects of how the EU and UK relations have evolved over the last couple of years. But at the same time, what I want to say and kind of appeal for is, let's use all the bodies we created, all the subcommittees under the withdrawal agreement, all the specialized committees under the partnership agreement, because there is a lot to do. And I think that the areas with James and I already referred to, be it discussion and cooperation in energy. I think that especially the last year and last winter, it just showed how important our cooperation in that regard is. Of course, we appreciate enormously that we are in total sync if it comes to the sanctions on Ukraine, if it comes to the aid to Ukraine, to the assistance, be it financial, military, the offering the safe harbor to the refugees from Ukraine, and this is very important because we've been all shocked by the fact that war has returned to the European continent. And then of course we have areas like research and innovation. I think that we put a very good offer on the table, and we are kind of expecting how our UK partners would react to this area. So what I want to say is that we have to implement this both agreement, at the same time use the full potential, because I believe a lot of the issues which are currently, let's say, or not governed or not let's say used as they could be, is because we haven't fully explored the potential which these both agreements are offering to us.
So what you're saying is that musicians and others who are struggling under the current arrangements in the TCA shouldn't hold their breath. They're not going to expect radical changes anytime soon.
I think that what is very important, if you look at the discussion, let's say we have had a year ago between EU UK. I can tell you from my personal experience, it was a pretty difficult one, and look how a lot of things have changed since the winter and the spring of this last year. And therefore, I believe that if we will bring the same spirit to using fully the parameters of these two agreements, we can reveal a lot of, I would say, new areas and the potential for the cooperation, because it's covering a lot of ground. But at the same time, we have to repeat it all the time that this is the frame, this is the framework, and it's very difficult to get out of these two treaties, because they've been negotiated with a great care, with a very clear balance in the outcome, and they've been negotiated in that way because that was the true reflection of the interests of the EU on one side and of the UK on the other side.
And with the retained EU law bill, the bill that you mentioned in your speech, does that risk jeopardizing that close cooperation that you've described?
Of course, we are following it extremely closely. We understand that the bill is having its, let's say, parliamentary course, and of course we will comment in a great detail once this bill is adopted. But at the same time, when we see how the discussion is evolving, and I understand that big part of the audience who is following this conference would like to see more seamless trade, less friction, less complications. But it's very difficult to achieve that if the decision is just to simply go for more divergence, or if let's say the law which we've been building together for many decades and underpins even some of the fundamentals of the withdrawal agreement and TCAs would be thrown into the shredder. So I know that there is a discussion about this. We are also talking about that with our colleagues on the UK side, and we will see how all this would evolve. But as I said, if we are in the situation that there will be more divergence, clearly there will be more obstacles, and it has negative impact on trade.
So essentially, you're saying to Rishi Sunak to keep his shredder to himself and not deploy it with the vigor of which he intended during his pre-election campaign.
I would definitely not give an advice to the British Prime Minister on what he should do or how he should prepare for the campaign. We are just, I would say, recalling also the experience over the last couple of years that simply if you are going for the divergence, then there is a need, of course, for making sure that the goods, let's say, which are manufactured differently in one place, then have to comply with the rules on the other side of the channel, and of course it has to be checked, it has to be controlled, and there will be the equivalence and conformity certificates, and I can go on and on and on. So it's definitely not something which makes it easier for the businessman. We understand that UK is a sovereign country. We respected the decision to leave the European Union, and of course the fact that UK is governed by their own laws. We are just reminding that what could be the consequences and how it can impact our trade and our economic relationship.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Šefčovič, for your time. I'm conscious that our time together is up. May I thank you warmly for your warmth, your insights, and for your willingness to carry on engaging in such a constructive way. Can I urge the audience to stay with us? The next speaker will be Kelly Beaver, MBE, who's going to be talking about the very practical issues of recent polling and what the attitudes are in the UK towards the EU and vice versa. Thank you very much. The next session will start at 10:15 exactly. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you and all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you.